Hello and welcome everybody to the interview portion of Around the Battleground. Today our guest is Julian, better known as Aeolus. I feel like nobody knows you as that actually. So like
Yeah, I don't
lesser
know.
known is probably the better way. Better known
Yeah,
as just Julian turns out. Owner of Obey. How you doing?
doing very good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So for those of you who don't know, haven't heard the news yet, I don't know how you watch this show and you haven't heard, but Obey Alliance is not making the transition to season 6. It's very sad, and I highly recommend you haven't seen it. The finale doc that they put at really good stuff. Uh, if you're a really big Smite fan, especially of Obey, it might just make you cry. I know I'm a pretty big fan of Obey. I have been since I basically got into Smite, when they were hungry for more, and I just love all those guys. And you know, uh, having seen you behind the scenes too, how big of an impact is it for you to have to like leave Smite like this?
Uh, it's something I definitely avoid talking about in the documentary because, I mean, I touched on it briefly just for storyboarding, but uh, very emotional. I really think one thing I wish I would have been able to do is capture the reason why it was so emotional for me towards the end. Obviously, we had a really sad scene when we lost to Splice, which it was killer, but I don't think it was so much killer because we lost. We've been around the scene for 3 years. We've lost in a grand final. We've lost in a semifinal, and now we lost in a quarter. And I don't think it's so much we're unfamiliar with it. It's really rough. I'm not the typical GM, especially not with this team. They're my brothers, they're my family, and the reason why I would say obeys and smite, obviously we believed in smite and still believe in smite. But the reason I really wanted to be there was to support their aspirations and dreams of them as people, not so much of them as just some smite team. And if at any point that roster broke up, Obey wouldn't continue in Smite. That's where all our passion landed, and that's where I stand on it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what like Smite was like Obey's like if not the first big team you guys picked up, one of the first teams you really picked up, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was the first esports team that I picked up when I had taken leadership over the organization, which was it was interesting. I was so new to it. I had no experience, and I think that's why I love them the most is that they had so much understanding and respect for me. You have this 18-year-old GM that walks in, you meet him, and you're about 10 years older than him. And you're like, well, but they were super respectful and super passionate about the brand and what I was doing. And I think that's why, like I said, I care for them as individuals so much.
What was it specifically about Smite that like made you guys kind of enter? I mean, you initially Obey kind of started out as like what a COD community, right? You guys were making like snipe
Yeah,
montages
we
and
were a
stuff. Like you guys
Call
were
of Duty or Call of Duty team. I don't think that was a particular thing. At the time, Smite had a lot of interests from organizations that kind of were around us, and they got us interested. And I think it was the first esport that I could say, well, can we manage this financially? Yes. This would get our foot in the door. There's obviously a long-term objective with picking up the team, but it escalated extremely fast. And I think overall, it wasn't like, oh, we love Smite from the start. It was more strategic planning, on the back end. But we grew to love it very fast. And me being a gamer, and I play every game that we pick up normally just to understand it, so I can support the players to my maximum ability by understanding what they do on a day-to-day basis. Um, and I love the game too. I mean, I'm still playing it. So yeah, I think it was just more at the start, just kind of just strategic plotting around the esports field. It was a good way in for us, so we did it.
what really attracted you to at the time they were hungry for more. This team on this massive losing streak. Coming like
Yeah.
they had been to Worlds before, but like something just was off. And as an
Yeah.
NA org to pick up an EU team, like what was it about those guys that just really captured your heart? And were there any other squads that you were kind of looking at the time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So at first we were talking to, I don't know if you remember, but Randazos. And that was a North American eighth seed team, I believe.
Yeah,
We had good talks with them. I just didn't, I don't want to get too much into that. But long story is, I ended up getting connected with Hi-Rez. And what I love about Hi-Rez is how passionate they are about getting organizations involved with their game. And immediately, Hindu, I think a few others joined in a call with me. It's like, how can we help you get into Smite? And I was like, well, I would love to know rosters. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about EU, and the concept of being a North American organization in North America, picking up North American teams wasn't something that was in my head. I was a young GM. I was like, I want to get the best I can get, no matter where it is, because in my head, why does it matter? And it does matter in some aspects thinking about it now. But they were like, well, why don't you look at EU? And the first team they recommended was Hungry for More. Um, just insight on my process when it comes to picking teams, I try to find teams that we can really mesh well with in terms of passion and vision. If I get into a call with a team and the only thing I hear from them is salary and how much are you going to pay me and how long's the contract and that's it, to be honest, I'm not interested. And that might sound a little weird to some people, but I don't look to just build team. I just don't look to pick up teams, and when they stop winning, drop them. I look to pick up teams that are going to develop the Obey Alliance legacy, become part of our brand identity, and furthermore, help us get to our end goal as an organization. And to say the least, that's everything they embody. They're passionate, they're respectful, they're very humble, and I loved that about them. I loved their vision. I loved how much they wanted to win. And I think it was a matter of how much we identified with each other, which is why, as soon as we got out of the call, we knew we were signing them. There was no questions. The negotiation was literally a day. And we were done. We were signed. And it was awesome, really. I think that's like the easiest team signing I've ever had. And it's the best team I've ever managed. So
out of that first year, I mean, obviously, the world's run has got to be up there. But like, is there a specific moment that other than specifically that world's run that like is a favorite of yours that like really like got into your heart?
well, it's hard to not label the world's run.
Right.
And for that reason is we went to group stage and that's when I first met them. I have made it my objective to go to every land that they're at. I did miss super regionals, but there was some actual health issues behind that reason. But I met them, we started our tradition of doing the team dinners together, getting to know each other. Gonna be honest with you, I wasn't all too familiar. I was still learning what does it mean to be the number one team in Smite? How do you get to that place? Obviously, there's a world championship. How do we get there? So the previous format was you had a group land stage, and then if you won that, you would proceed to the super regional land stage, and if you got through that, you would go to worlds. And going through groups, obviously we had our shakeups, but we ended up making it through super regionals. And then super regionals, I was at home, and I remember we were going against Orbit, who was the first seed, and nobody, I'm pretty sure, predicted us to win that set. And we won. And I don't even think I fully processed that as a young, like I said, when I come back to talking about big picture, how fast it escalated for us as a team, I picked these guys up. I knew where they stood, but I wasn't quite sure, how fast they could proceed as a team. And then they go to Worlds, and as an organization who just got into Smite, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is amazing for us. This is exactly what we wanted maybe a year from now, but this is what we have 2 months after signing. Um, and that was amazing. and the reason why I put so much on the world's run, and I know it's always something that's talked about, is because for me as an individual and for Obey, I think that's the moment I sat there and said, wow, like this is what I was meant to do. This is what I want to do. And it comes down to a few moments. One, it comes down to the eager set and the NRG set. And there's a few reasons behind those that I'd like to speak to. And um, the eager set, we smash Soar, which is always good for me, and then we go to eager, and I don't know what to expect. Uh, Truthfully, I didn't know what to expect. It was already amazing for me to be in a semifinal. I couldn't believe we were there. But getting to the world final was like another topic. And I remember winning the first two matches and thinking to myself, what is going on? Like in my head, I was thinking to myself, I don't even feel like this is real, truthfully. Um, then they take two games off us, and I think that's when I like experienced my first. I'm gonna be honest with you. Every game that we play that has so much weight on it, I'm like on the verge of a heart attack almost every time. I even did like a heart rate monitor when we were doing our world qualifying games. This past one, and I got up to like 150 at some moments. And I know that's probably not exactly healthy, but I think that shows. I mean, it just means that much to me. And I remember in the whole old Cobb Energy Center, you have the balconies that the teams could sit on. So we moved spots. I was sitting in this regular seats, and I moved to the balcony. I remember Game 5. Um, Twig pops off on Fenrir. We win the game, and I just like I couldn't even stand. Like I couldn't believe that Obey was already where I envisioned it to be so fast for these guys. And then the NRG set, which game one I think is arguably the best game of Smite you'll probably ever see. If you want to see the highest definition of competitive play and Smite and excitement, I feel like game one against NRG embodies that. Um, I remember taking game three off NRG and the whole stadium chanting Obey. And that's for me my moment. Like that was the moment I said, this is where my heart is, this is like where I had envisioned Obey had happened very fast. And I think that's why it's so special to me. Is just I feel like it was a realization of a path that we didn't foresee yet, and it was just already there. And we were already at a stop that we wanted to make, and it really drove me as an individual to continue pushing hard in this space, but also pushing hard for the Smite community because I seen just how engaged and passionate the fan base was, and I'm a passionate person, man. I love seeing that, and it drives me up the wall when I get to have very passionate conversations with people about my team and about their career paths. And I think for me, that's why that event was so important to Obey our team and our legacy in Smite. So
I'll never forget, like, still to this day, just, like, spine tingling, like, hair on edge, that "Obey," chant, Season
yeah,
3 Worlds, that, like, I was a fledgling just, like, esports person, like, I was just getting into it, like, as a, like, maybe this is, like, something I could do, and, like, that moment, hearing the entire arena start chanting "Obey," it was just like, oh, this is what I
yeah,
want. This is it. Like that, like it
yeah.
just solidified everything for me. And that's like what really like spurred me on to like start doing the shows and everything I will never forget that moment as long as I live. Like just
Yeah,
being in that energy. And
and
I
that's
can't
why like
imagine like
every time I talk about it, it's like, well, what's your favorite moment? I have to keep coming back to it, and it's because of that. It's so electrifying. It's so full of passion and emotion for me that it's impossible to go back and and be like, oh, well, there's this and that. It was everything that I have ever wanted for Obey, and at the time, our relationship with the guys was good. It was amazing. It just we weren't as nearly as close as we are now, and so it was just a really good moment for everybody. I think. Unfortunately, losing wasn't. But losing because I wasn't as emotionally invested yet. I was invested, but I feel like I was not all the way in yet, like emotionally. Like I had just picked up the team, you know. Obviously, winning is a huge deal, and losing really did suck. But losing, as I began to feel, came a little bit harder and harder as I grew in passion and support for the team. So
Were you at all like shocked at how quickly like the crowd embraced Obey? Like not only just like the team, because like the team had been embraced for a long time, but like Obey as the org, as the brand is like they really latched onto it. And like I guess some of it really had to do with you guys going up against NRG really
yeah,
to start. Like you guys were, everything that NRG wasn't. That's what you guys were. The humble versus the bragging. The big arrogance that NRG kind of exudes versus like you guys are more quiet, humble, reserved, and like you guys were the
yeah.
perfect foil for that in that set.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked. It was the underdog story. People wanted to see it. I mean, we beat their team, Eager, in their stadium, and I say their stadium because literally there wasn't a crowd that was more for anybody than Eager. And I think at that point, not only did we beat their team, which meant, obviously I want to cheer for that team. They deserve it, but then we're going against NRG, who are like the Kings. And I think Nate said it perfectly. I think in one of the documentaries made is like, there's no other person you want to face in that position, really. You want to go against the top of the top, and they were the best, and they proceeded to be the best for a very long time until we beat them in spring. So
So to us, to the fans, the community, right? Like the EU rivalries, you got Dig Rival are probably the pairing, and then NRG Bay. Does any of that carry over? Like, is there any like rivalry you feel with like NRG as an org, or is that like strictly just like players on the field kind of stuff?
I think it just comes down to Smite. I personally always will believe that NRG versus Obey will be one of Smite's most historic rivalries. It proceeded to just grow going forward into the spring of next year after Season 3 Worlds. And I was talking to Brett, who's the president of NRG, about it, and it really has impacted Smite in a way I don't think we both were seeing. I didn't really realize the full scope of our rivalry until Season 4. um, and it is based in Smite, but I do think it was amazing for Smite. And every time that we played each other, the viewership went up. And every time that we went against each other, there was more on the line. It was a bigger story. And I still remember beating, it's funny enough, it's like the first game of the SPL season 4 spring split and beating NRG. And for me, that was huge. 2-0ing NRG at the time was unheard of. And then we start the season with that, and it felt great. And that's when the rivalry started. And as you'll probably notice, when we do beat NRG, we obviously make a different statement on our posts, but that's because we want to play into it. We want people to feel like, yeah, we beat you guys. And obviously they beat us when it mattered the most, but we made it a point to kind of continue the rivalry, and they did as well. So,
One of the bigger things that happened, I feel like, with Obey was, the first doc that came out around you guys,
yeah,
Spiff Sinister doing the his first doc around Obey, and just how powerful that was
yeah.
uh what was that process like? Because I imagine he came to you and was like, "Hey, I want to do a doc about your guys and about you guys," and uh, were you was
I
any
mean,
part of you reluctant on that, or like how did that work?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I really didn't have that much involvement. I think Spiff is an amazing person. He makes great documentaries. Um, excuse me. And he came to me and he said, "Well, I'm making a doc," and I said, "Great, I can't wait." And honestly, that was the first of my involvement. He
Okay.
interviewed the guys, and I remember watching it, and it just I love that documentary so much. Speaking of that, I was actually just watching it like an hour ago, just because I got redirected after finishing some work on the doc. And it's just so well put together. He did a really amazing job of telling those guys stories, and telling the story of that season three Worlds and everything leading up to it. And it really helped me understand the core of what the Obey team was a lot more as well. From an Obey perspective, it helped us um, build some more bridges together and understanding of the history of Prime and Twig and Nate. And it was great, man. I really appreciate him for that. That's something that, I'll go back, 30 years from now and I'll look back at it. And I think that's why I appreciate our doc so much. And I appreciate Narwhal who produced it is for me, that piece isn't about getting views on YouTube. That piece is something I'll go back 50 years from now and say, wow, that was something I did with the team I loved. And for honestly, it may sound for some people, wow, that's a highlight. But honestly, my time with that team is one of the highlights of my life. I'll never forget. And just having something like that to remember it by, I think, is why it means so much to us. So,
Yeah, it really felt like that doc is kind of like the solidification of like what Obey is, right? Like that
mhm.
was you guys didn't have a lot of history, and then having that and it you kind I'm not gonna say like you piggybacked off of like Twig and Nate and those guys, but like
Yeah,
your ideals and who they had been just melded so perfectly. It was like, oh, this is Obey. Like that was what forged Obey like for the future. And like that nobody you can't untangle what had been and what was and what was going to be after that doc.
yeah, I agree, 100%. I really do believe that we were just. I think that sometimes life gives you things that are just meant to be. Truthfully, it's just part of the journey, um, and it was meant to be. Absolutely, I think it was almost destiny. So it was great, honestly.
So, as much love as you have and like the admiration, everything that goes around, Nate and the boys. Uh, what was it like picking up the console team?
Yeah.
Mifflin and all those guys, because that was a very different team environment and a very different scene and everything like that. Like, how
Yeah.
how was the Obey adventure into console Smite?
I don't regret it at all, man. I really liked those guys. A bunch of really funny people, Mifflin especially. Cougar is really respectable. Who was on the roster at the time? Jelly, Delta Marine, um, and then we had Manser. I really think that they were a great team. When I came home from Worlds, I said, okay, well, how do we continue to influence Smite? And the best way I could think about doing that is, okay, we'll get involved in every area we can. And the last area was console. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to pick up the former world champs. I mean, if I have an opportunity to get involved, but also pick up top talent, and then talk to them and kind of really like what they were coming from, they just wanted support. They wanted an organization to stand behind. Then great. It was a perfect match, and it was a good time. Obviously, we didn't win anything crazy, but I actually really enjoyed that team. They gave us, every time they played against Sora, they beat them, and that's the most I can ask for. And they did have a few good splits, and they weren't, they were a decent team that I really enjoyed working with. So I think that time in console was well spent. Seriously, the fact we didn't continue, I think, just had um, a lot to do with we just kind of wanted to focus on the SPL team at one point. I'm pretty sure. Like after season four Worlds, we were just saying, well, I think it's just time to buckle down on the SPL team, and that's where my headspace went. We had established our legacy. I felt like people knew who we were in Smite, and we had the ability to make that decision, and so I made it. And the team also obviously split up. A lot of people retired. It was just the right move to go. So
And so you guys, like you said, you wanted to kind of get into everything that High Resonance might had to offer. Was there ever any heavy consideration to make a push into Paladins at all?
no, yeah, actually, my girlfriend's been pushing me to play Paladins a little bit more lately, and it's a fun game to play. Um, I don't really think we just at one point we might have said maybe, and we talked to a few teams here and there. The team that just won the world championship, Elevate, for the console league. That was a team that we talked to before season four Worlds. There was thought, but at the end of the day, we decided against it. And I think that was more of, do we think this game meshes with the Obey brand well? Most likely not. Um, and I think I speak, it's more because of my evolution as a leader. When I picked up Smite, it was obviously you're like, well, you're talking about doesn't mesh with the Obey brand well. It's an FPS. Like, what are you talking about? You have an FPS ran organization, and Smite is a MOBA. It's clearly different. But at that time, I wasn't thinking that way. And now that I had more direction on how do you build this brand, how do we do what makes more sense? That's when I was just thinking to myself, like, it just isn't the right move for us. But it is a great game. I enjoy playing it. So nothing against it.
Uh, at some point, I forget, was it end of season 4? Was it this year? Timeline gets muddy for me, but Obey as a brand, as an org, was picked up and kind of brought into the. I mean, you're wearing the Houston Outlaws shirt. You guys were
Yeah.
brought into, was it Infinite Esports Entertainment?
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, how did that impact like the growth and everything for Obey?
Yeah. I don't it was great. I mean, I think it comes down to me as an individual getting more support, and Obey getting more support. And I agreed with their vision of what they wanted for Obey. And this year, Obey has grown over 3,000%. It's been immensely successful. I think a large of that is due to Fortnite. And a lot of right decisions. Right now, we're hitting around 75 million views a month as a network of our creators in Obey. We've grown over 50,000 subscribers on our YouTube. And I would say it's went incredibly well, probably as well as I could have hoped for it, or didn't even think it could go this well, truthfully. Um, and so for that reason, it's been a really good year. Obviously, had some ups and downs with our venture into Rainbow Six, which wasn't because of the team, just wasn't as successful. Um, and then we just are really hard focused on content, because the way I see Obey as a content organization is that we have this anomaly of creators that are so invested into the brand, invested into the vision, and are growing at an impeccable rate. That's not something that organizations get every day. And I think that's why we're focusing so hard on it, is because we need to capitalize on that. We're talking about growing, as a network over 150,000 subscribers a month. I cannot name any organizations other than like FaZe that experience that type of growth, and TSM and a few others. So we're just focused on content, and I think Infinite had a lot to do with that direction. But I believe that their long-term strategy, the way that they develop their business and the professionals that exist there, help me as a person and leader develop my brain long-term, speaking about Obey. Bay is just a team. I'm the leader of it, and then I'm starting to learn all. I'm basically getting put through business leadership, but the hard way. And I was in like business administration and leadership at New York University, and I ended up leaving to do this. And I think it's been a tough journey to go through the ringer just to learn. But I think that I've come out way better, by going through it the hard way than the easy way. So
Now, you said like your focus is on the content stuff. Does that mean we're going to see Obey kind of shift away from being like an esports organization and more like doing a content organization? Is that really like the evolution
yeah,
that we're seeing? Why you guys are dropping the Smite team and everything?
I wouldn't say that's the only reason why. There's a lot of complexities around the decision to leave Smite,
Right.
but I do think that um, us being where we are in content right now had a big deal with it. Obviously, there's some direction that comes from a higher level. Not that it's enforced, but I take that advice seriously. Um, and I do think you will see that over the coming months, just to focus on content overall. Um, that doesn't mean we'll never get back into esports. That will come. I just think it has to do with us executing what's in front of us first. And once we do and perform to our maximum ability with this, because been doing an amazing job. I just think we can do an even better job. I think that's when you'll probably see us step back into esports. I don't know what that will be. I have no clue, truthfully. I just think right now it's our time to just focus on growing, and that's what we're going to do.
So I know you guys are leaving Smite as an esports organization, but does that mean you guys are going to completely leave the community of Smite? Do you guys plan to do anything with Smite still? I mean, content is always something that can be broached. Like I know you guys have kind of. I saw on Twitter earlier that Rathan's now not an Obey streamer for with Smite anymore. Are you guys kind of taking a step back completely from Smite, or are we still going to see some Obey stuff here and there?
Maybe. I haven't actually put much thought into that since I've been focused so much on kind of making sure that our exits from Smite is appropriate. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. I think my initial thought process is probably not, and I don't think that has to do with Smite. I just think that, like I said, if the guys want to stay and obey for however long they want, they can stay here till it ends. If it ever ends, never ends. But I think that we have executed appropriately in taking a step back from Smite. And whilst I may have some interest in some of the content creators in Smite, I just don't foresee us investing there. Not yet. It's too soon. It's too soon to tell as well. And I think a lot of where I want Obey's legacy to land and just kind of if it's going to end is going to be with our team. So
All right. I think that's kind of to be expected. You know, you guys
yeah,
you gotta let the time for the breakup to breathe, right? You can't
yeah,
just come rushing back to it. There's got to be that time to reflect and kind of just let everything settle. Obviously, you guys leaving is, it's a big blow for you guys. It's a big blow for the team and fans of the org and everything. So just a lot of
yeah,
emotions kind of right there, and wanting to proceed the best way you can. Like you said, I think the biggest thing with Obey and talking to you is that legacy is really important. So you don't want to like go back to the well, do something rushed, and kind of tarnish
yeah,
what you guys uh, have established here so far.
yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely the thinking behind it.
All right. Well, it was. I don't know. I think that's really all we can say. I mean, I could try to pry, more questions about the decision and all that, but I think, I think I know better than to really dive into that and what I'll get
Yeah.
from you.
I mean, I don't mind being a little bit transparent about it. The thing is, it's immensely hard, and I think for that, a lot of the changes that are happening in season 6 are not necessarily ones that I don't agree with. Smite going to LAN is a huge step for Smite. I think it's going to be great. I think though that it did impact our roster a bit. And like I've said, and I will repeat it, if the core of Obey was to disband, I have no interest. And along with the differences that were happening from our direction as a company to then a lot of the speculation that was happening from when we were made aware and then made the team aware, it's just the end of an era, man. I think that's just simply put. Prime retiring, Hazer retiring. For me, that's it. And I think it's not to say like, oh, Nate doesn't matter and Twig doesn't matter and Raffer and Zayla doesn't matter. Truthfully, I will go to every Smite event that Twig is at, that Nate is at, anybody and rappers that I love the Smite community. I'm so involved with the players now. I'm so involved with what they've built that I'd love to support it still. And I just think I hope actually I don't think I hope that people see that Obey will always support Smite, and you'll see us interacting with Smite when the games are on or when the live. I'll do whatever I can as a GM to make that known because we owe a lot to Smite, and I'm never going to stop giving to it. Um, it's just like I said, I think it was just a culmination of things that ended up just being the move, and it wasn't easy, but it just ended up being what it had to be done. So
I think, really looking at Smite and Obey and everything and the timing, I think you kind of saying that it was the end of an era, it's that transitional period. I think that is really an important thing to highlight, because like when you guys came in, Smite was pretty established for what it was, but season three Worlds, that was a defining moment in the history of Smite, and that changed some things for Smite, and I really do feel like it gave Smite a brighter future. That was like a lot of people started paying more attention to Smite, and you can't have that without like also having Obey kind of ingrained with that. You guys were young, or you guys didn't really have a lot of the history that like even NRG, like those are two young orgs at the time, really getting into that, and then you guys being so pivotal to that change in Smite. It really did mark a change. And between season 3 and now, you guys have really been at the center for a lot of the progress, the growth of Smite. Like all of these teams and orgs really have built the foundation in the middle. Like if we really look at Smite, like this is the middle period, right? Season 3 to season 5 is that new weird middle period, and now season 6 is the next big step and change. And so you guys to like, we came in, we did what we needed to do. It's not ideal, but it's change, and change
yeah,
isn't always negative. Change is scary, but it doesn't mean it's bad. And I really feel like for those of you out there who are maybe upset by Obey leaving or don't quite understand it, because I know there's some people out there like, why you got to leave? I love you guys. I don't want to see my team break up, but change can be a good thing on both sides.
yeah,
Who knows where you know Nate will go, where Twig will go. Like those guys are going to find new homes, and you know, while we would have liked to see you guys go out on a win at Worlds this year, maybe seeing them succeed somewhere else. That change of scenery really benefiting them, and
yeah.
I think that's just a really good note to wrap things up on, is that change is scary, but it's sometimes it can be really positive, and that holds true for Smite going into season 6. That goes for you at a Bay, kind of transitioning away from the esports org to the content org, and I think I can really speak for everybody that even though you guys are taking a step back from Smite, I think we're all still going to follow you guys' journey because of what you've meant to us as an org and as a team, and you as an owner. I mean, uh, I don't think there's really anybody who's a fan of the competitive Smite scene that really doesn't know Obey and Julian, because you
Yeah.
guys cared so much, right? Like you guys, there's a lot of orgs that have been a part of Smite. There's and will be a part, but not every org has the heart that you guys did, and I think that was really
Thank
important.
you.
And honestly, what we needed in the Smite scene, like that change, is something that was really necessary, and you guys really brought that and largely changed the
Thank you.
culture of Smite. Yeah.
Thank you so
So I
much.
know I'm making you cry right now, but
I know
uh,
it's been really yeah. It's just because I've gotten those comments just from when the documentary um went out, and it's just been you love to see it, but it hurts at the same time because you kind of just
it's a
take a
good
step
hurt
back
though.
and realize it's a good hurt. It's just you realize how much you me as a person and Obey as a brand, which is always more important, has impacted people, and that's always the primary intention, at least for us. So it's good, man. I appreciate your words. I appreciate everything as I said to Obey and to me and to the guys. Those are things I don't think we'll ever forget, and will always be appreciated. So
All right. So is there anything else before we cut off here? Any other shout outs you want to give? I know that was largely what you just did. But anything else, anybody specifically, or anybody you want to address from the Smite community or high res, and
No, I mean, shout out to
we'll
high
wrap up
res.
everything in a bow.
Yeah, I think shout out to high res. I know that they're getting their hand in a couple of difficult decisions. I support them. I support them as a company. I believe that they're led by a number of really passionate people that have done really good by my organization and will do really good by others. And I think that we worked really well together, and just like I said, no, even from the F dot interview, and you've seen him. I didn't realize he got emotional until I watched it. But just seeing that passion for a brand that he's involved with, but he's not directly involved with. It just shows how much passion they have for their scene, and I think that's what's great about Smite. And shout out to all the amazing players that I've had the chance to meet from Smite. I think they're amazing people. Seriously, I can't get enough hanging around with them. I love the community of Smite, and I think we owe it all to you, to everybody, really. And I just shout out to everyone in Smite. Honestly, it's in a great community. It's a great team ran company, and I really think it's just a great place to be for organizations. So
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking to me. Uh, you guys have set the bar for what is expected of esports orgs coming into Smite, and I think a lot of who high res lets in has been influenced by you guys at this point. So I'm excited to see. I'm sad to see you go, but I am excited to see who's gonna, fill those shoes. Right, they're big shoes to fill once you guys leave, and I know high res is gonna try to and do right by you guys because like whoever takes that spot is taking Obey's spot. Right, they've got to measure up. So I know they're gonna try
yeah,
to find somebody to
I'm sure
fill
they will.
your legacy.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. If anything, I always can count on my friends at Space Station Gaming. Shonduras is amazing, and
Yeah.
those guys, they got the formula right. So that's who I'll be supporting, and any team that my guys are on, or probably have a jersey or two of them too. So
All right. That was good. All right. Thank you, Julian, for coming on. Best of luck in everything you guys are doing. Like I already said, like I'm sure, even though you're leaving Smite, we're still gonna follow your journey with Obey and really hope for the best. Your growth and success is, our growth and success in a way. We're so tied. Like the Smite community is always gonna be tied to you guys somewhere,
yep,
somehow. All right.
agreed.
So thanks for
Thank you
coming
so
on.
much. It
And
was a pleasure
maybe we'll have to have you on in the future.
for
Maybe we'll
sure,
have
man.
you on around an event to talk about your boys' progress and get you to cry again.
Oh no. All right. I think that's when we end.
All right, all right. Thanks for
All
watching,
right.
everybody. This has been around the battleground. At this point, we're pre-recording all these so far in advance. I don't know who's going to be our guest next week, but uh, it'll be good. I promise. I swear. So until next time, everybody. I'll see you on the battleground. Goodbye.